Denise, you're muted. Denise, you need to unmute yourself.
Can you hear me now?
There you go. Yep.
Okay. Technical difficulty, so sorry about that. And welcome everybody to the program and good afternoon. We really appreciate you joining us today. And I noticed a lot of new participants here today, so just want to take some time to tell you a little bit about our organization. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Are you okay? Okay. So Silicon Valley Forum is a 37-year-old nonprofit supporting the global startup and technology ecosystem. So what that means is that we create content and organize over about 50 programs and events per year. In 2015, we launched our largest Women in Tech initiative, which is our annual Women in Tech Festival. This year, it is being held virtually on November 14th and 15th. And if you want to find out more information about that program, as well as the many other programs that we do, please visit our website at siliconvalleyforum.com. We are also a proud subsidiary of the Silicon Valley Organization, or the SVO for short. They share the same commitment to the business, startup, and technology community. They bring together leaders and influencers and are a catalyst for growth and a champion for a stronger community. They offer many resources and programs to educate and support your company. So I encourage you to find out more about them and the incredible work that they do at their website at thesvo.com. And if you have any questions about how to be involved in either organization, I will put the contact information into the chat box. And that's it, so let's kick off the program. We have 4 incredible speakers here today who are ready to give you the strategic advice and share their knowledge about navigating your startup journey through this time of change. And I will now turn this over to our moderator, Jing Brewer, who is a principal director at Accenture Ventures. Jing?
Thank you, Denise. So good to be here, everyone. I'm flattered that you called me an expert in this space. The reason I signed up for this is because I wanted to learn myself as well. So I will probably put myself as the same category as probably people that are listening to this panel discussion. And these questions are genuine. I'm genuinely curious about, what our true experts are going to say about this topic. So a little bit of introduction, background of me. As Denise mentioned, I'm part of Accenture Ventures. I've been with the team for about 4 years, and Accenture Ventures is a program that's focusing on building partnership with startups that Accenture as a company can leverage for ourselves as well as for our clients. So we primarily focusing on, B2B type of startups, but we have been a partner of Silicon Valley Forum for the past, how many years now, Denise? 3, 4? It's been a while. Yeah. So yeah, we're very happy to be part of this program and, looking forward to learn more about the COVID, the impact to startups, to our community. So with that said, normally what I would do is that I would go on and gushing about how amazing our panelist is. But today I think I'm going to do something slightly different. So instead of me introducing our panelists, I think I wanted to get the panelists to introduce themselves. And then also, instead of just talking about their accomplishments, maybe we'll turn the question a little bit. How do you feel in this crazy, unpredictable, disruptive period of time that's unprecedented to anything that we've seen in the last 70 years? I mean, there's just tons of scary media news out there about things are changing and our lives are disrupted and our values are completely not the same as past anymore. So I wanted to use this opportunity as a way to really get to know our panelists, to ask you guys, how do you guys feel and what do you do? So maybe we'll start with Shelly, Arum, and then Michele.
Very well. Thank you, Jing. Thank you so much for that introduction and for telling us about yourself. And thanks to Denise and the Silicon Valley Forum for having me on. I'm really honored. And anytime I can talk about my passion, which is investing in female entrepreneurs, I never pass up that opportunity. So good to be here. I would say, to cut to the chase and what you're asking, how do I feel? I feel, so when COVID started, when COVID hit the US markets, we were positioned, our fund knew that we had to do something. Traditionally, women are left behind when it comes to times of crises. They take on most of the burden, whether it's at home or whether it's in jobs. And so just being Shatter Fund, given that our focus is investing in women, we dug in really quickly to figure out, okay, how are we going to make this crisis different? Again, we see that, this is unprecedented. This is a time where, we've never seen anything like this before in our lifetime. So how are we going to make this work for women, and how will we make them stronger in a post-COVID and in the recovery? And what we decided to do was, while a lot of VCs are holding back and sitting on dry powder, we decided that this was the time to redouble our investments in women entrepreneurs. This is a critical time. Women need to be 100% participants in the innovation economy, and it's not going to happen by playing it safe during such an uncertain market. So how we feel is good. We feel positive. We also feel very uncertain, but we know that our commitment more than ever is unwavering to invest in female entrepreneurs.
That's amazing. I feel that energy. Thank you. Arum, maybe we'll go to you next. You're talking on mute, by the way.
Hi, guys. Now you can hear me. Yeah, I was just saying, Shelly, that was really inspiring, hearing that as a female entrepreneur. So, hi, everyone. Also very excited to be here. My name is Arum. I am one of the 3 co-founders and CEO of Coffee Meets Bagel. We are a dating app with the mission to make love accessible to everyone. And in order to do that, we believe that it's not only our job to be expert at matchmaking our daters to the right people, but also be able to provide education, knowledge, and opportunities to practice love. And so those 2 are really important pillars for how we achieve that mission. To answer your question, Jing, when COVID hit, we definitely saw our business metrics impacted, kind of overnight, actually, particularly in the US when the shelter in order in place took effect. And that was very scary. I think it was scary for the leadership team, scary for all of us in the team. And sort of long story short, how I feel also right now is actually looking at this as an opportunity for us. There are 3 specific things that I can get into more detail later that we decided to focus on. And one of them really was investing in developing our people, protecting our employees, and practicing more resilience. And I think overall, through the initiatives that we've done to bring our people together and helping them through this uncertainty, I think we're coming off actually stronger and tighter as a team. And it's giving us real opportunity to rethink about how we work, how the process that we have. And it really gives you opportunity to sort of start from scratch, because you have to kind of throw away everything that's how you've done in the past. And so, yes, it's scary. It's sometimes paralyzing, but we feel very good about really looking at this as an opportunity.
That's wonderful. Thank you. And Michele, last but not least.
Hi, I'm Michele Massino, based here in Silicon Valley. I'm CEO of a company called Explora International, and I wrote a book a few years ago called Decoding Silicon Valley, The Insider's Guide. What I've been focused on for the last few years is bringing Silicon Valley best practices to entrepreneurs around the world. So I've spent a lot of time on planes and worked in about 60 different countries around the world. What the interesting part of COVID is that it shut down a lot of my travel, I should say it shut down all my travel, beginning, from the mid-March timeframe. So what I've had to learn to do for myself is be able to put my training programs, coaching and mentorship programs online, and then how do we build trust and confidence between each other through online tools and technologies. And then secondarily, how do we help, how do I specifically help female entrepreneurs navigate through this uncertainty with respect to understanding what their current business or cash situation is, and then how do they look at changes that they need to make to their business so that they can continue to survive and then eventually thrive. So I did a number of programs for Irish companies early on that kicked off in the second half of March. For about 50 different companies from Ireland, all online, to try to help them understand all the things that they need to do to preserve capital, to preserve their relationships with their suppliers, with their customers, et cetera. And then how do they look at their products or services and provide light versions, smaller versions, different packaging, different sort of adjustments to what they're doing to address the fact that people had a lot less disposable cash, whether they were serving the consumer, or if they were in the enterprise B2B space, how did they continue moving along their sales cycle when a lot of enterprises were just freezing all their activity. So from my personal perspective, having been in Silicon Valley for a long time, I feel pretty optimistic that we will come out of this in a good way, but the short term right now, I think, is very, very painful across Silicon Valley. And it's a challenging environment for us overall here.
Yeah, thank you, Michele. Actually, that's a really good segue. So we heard a little bit of how everybody felt on the panel. Overall is optimism, which I'm super excited to hear. But Michele, maybe I'll start with you. What is the overall Silicon Valley mood like? You did touch on a little bit in your intro. I'm sensing a lot of survival. I'm curious to hear your point of view on that.
I think that overall, I think Silicon Valley is a very resistant region, specifically because there's a lot of very bright people that come here with lots of different ideas to, hack our business processes and how do we do business more effectively, more efficiently, that sort of thing. So I'm confident that we have sort of the brain trust to move through this more quickly and more efficiently than a lot of other parts of the United States. There's an old joke in Silicon Valley that when the traffic's bad, the economy's good. And I just drove to Palo Alto from San Mateo County yesterday or the day before. Literally, there were 8 cars on the freeway. So I said to myself, wow, no traffic whatsoever. So what is the true impact of COVID-19 on the Silicon Valley area? What concerns me right now for the short term is, depending on whose numbers you read, there's between 60 and 100,000 people who've been laid off from jobs that are related to the travel and the transportation sector, the food service, and now it's starting to hit down into co-working spaces where companies are just not able to pay their rent. And so co-working spaces are not needing the kind of staff that they need. The second thing is, I think from a rents perspective, there's going to be downward price pressure for the expensive apartments in San Francisco, because much of the large corporations are saying, you can work indefinitely in your job from home, which means that a lot of people are saying, I don't need to be in Silicon Valley anymore. I can move to the Midwest or Texas or what have you. So I think we're going to see anywhere from 10 to 20% downward price pressure on rents. And then the other thing is, obviously, there's an exodus from the Silicon Valley area right now because of the high cost of living. People don't need to be here to do their jobs. So those are some of the things that kind of concern me in the short term. But long term, if I look over the last couple of decades, we've rebounded from the dot-com crash in 2000 much more quickly than the rest of the United States did. And then we rebounded from the global financial crisis in 2008 and 2009 much more quickly than the rest of the United States did. So that gives me optimism, but right now I think there's a lot of pain in the Silicon Valley area.
Shelly, Arum, anything that you guys want to add?
I would say one thing. I would say that, I overall appreciate the positivity and the optimism on this panel, and I think that's right. Just thinking about, to go back to Michele's example, what I really appreciate about this time is that working from home or the office has been transformed forever and ever, right? So I was, and what Michele is saying, where, now we measure, economic, prosperity by the number of cars on the road. I think even that is going to change because more people have now the liberty to work from home, and work is still continuing. Some of my biggest investors are financial institutions. And I would say during COVID, I was heads down, the busiest I've ever been. And I was exhausted and I wasn't driving anywhere because there was more time to do work. I think that's one part of it. The other thing is that in May, I was appointed to Governor Newsom's Entrepreneurship Task Force. And my role was going to be to help drive access to capital for female entrepreneurs across California and to really shine a spotlight on that critical issue. But what's become the topic of the task force, a big part of it, is how do we now keep more people in California because they have the ability to go work wherever they want. And so therefore, where is home? So that's become a critical question that we're also answering. So just wanted to add those two pieces.
Yeah, I think what's really interesting, even within our company, we have 50 people, and we did a survey of, okay, what are people thinking in terms of office situation? When are we going to be ready to return, etc. I was really surprised. 20% of our employees mentioned that they're thinking of moving out of either San Francisco or Seattle, because we have a hub in Seattle also, which to me, I was a little bit shocked, to be honest, because that is very high percentage of people who are thinking of moving. And I actually think it's kind of amazing because it's really giving people opportunity to design work as they've always wanted, or maybe they didn't even know that they wanted and it was possible. And I think a lot of us, Coffee Meets Bagel, we've always been very remote friendly, yet still we had a lot of biases against how remote's not going to work, or this way, or it has to be this way or that way. And it really, this whole 3 months experience have shattered a lot of that. And so now it's really giving our employees freedom to design, okay, this is how I want to work. I want to be working, I don't know, wherever, beach here, I'm, enjoying the wind, or whatever the case is. I think that's a real possibility that people are, believing now is possible, which I think is a really, really great thing.
That's awesome. I am curious, Arum, have you seen the dating has gone up or down during COVID? Just curious.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, our success metric really is like how many physical dates do we enable our daters to go on, and so that totally changed once shelter in place took effect. So we definitely saw it was very interesting among the users who chose to continue. Hey, even in this environment, I want to connect with other people, and I'm going to virtually connect, whether it's use of video or phone calls or whatever else. The engagement was very high, highest we've ever seen. However, on the other side, you see people who consciously chose, like, right now, I don't know what's going to happen. I don't know when's the next time I can actually see this date in person. So I'm choosing to opt out of the whole dating scene completely until I have some more certainty. And so we definitely saw people having different, very extreme reactions. So there's some positive impact to the business in that sense, also, and negative.
Okay, that was just a fun question. I was just curious myself. So kind of back to the topic, why people are here. I think a lot of the participants on this call, you're either a startup founder or looking to start a startup, or already kind of on that path. So I want to talk a little bit about just like the funding situation, especially the fact that we're seeing there's layoffs, as Michele mentioned, and there's just a lot of negative things that are happening. So I'm curious, what is the funding situation like for a new founder or founder that are looking to raise another round? Shelly, something that you said really, I kind of took a mental note. You said that you've been busier than ever. So I'm curious, what does that look like? Why are you busy?
Yeah, thank you for that question, Jing. So I will say, as I was mentioning earlier, at the onset of COVID, my team and I made a very conscious decision to jump in and figure out how we can get ahead of this crisis to the extent possible, and how we can start to plan for an eventual recovery. And so the first thing we did was we surveyed over, 50 female-led and founded companies across the US. We saw that there was definitely a decrease in the capital being raised by women-led and founded companies, but 10% of them were still reporting an increase in the capital they were raising. So we took that as a glimmer of hope, right? We chose to focus on that side of it. And we went out and we sought the companies, because we were still deploying capital. And so we went out and we sought the companies that we felt would fit with our thesis. We'd already had some in the pipeline. And then we really just ratcheted up our investments. And we made, I think, four investments during that period, which we were very excited about. First of all, like I said, a couple of them we were already in the due diligence process with. So it's really important to keep your word. As a VC, as an investor, we really wanted to make sure that we're sending the right signal that yes, we can sit on our capital, but we're not going to do that. Now is the time that these founders need it the most. So we're going to redouble our investments, number one. Number two, we went out looking for those companies that we knew were going to need this capital to be able to scale. It's not going to be back to pre-COVID again, where you could be unprofitable, you could scale, and then you could go out and raise money and see if you can kind of converge the two. That's no longer the case. However, we were looking for companies that had the product market fit, and they could benefit from our capital and scale and help our investors and increase our portfolio's value. I would say that this is a time of great opportunity, and looking for those opportunities in crisis is what's really kept us busy.
Michele, any thoughts from your side?
Early on, after the shelter-in-place order hit, I was on a female founder sort of cocktail hour online, and there was probably 40 to 50 founders on that call, and this was within 2 weeks of the shelter-in-place order, at least in the California area. And there were 6 founders who said that all their fundraising had come to a dead stop at that particular point in time. But I've since learned that things started to open up again and ratchet up again as investors were much more circumspect about what the impact of all this is, and the fact that, yes, things are changing, but as investors, our job is to, find good quality companies with great founders, with great business opportunities. So they were starting to see things kind of open up after about six weeks or so. So I think the opportunities are still there, and I think we're going to be learning an awful lot through this process of work from home, of less cars on the road, more delivery services for different things. There's just so many different things we can't even envision yet, that I think this new sort of normal, our new normal, is going to help us, develop new market opportunities.
Yeah, absolutely. Actually, Shelly, I want to come back to you, because something that you said, I was just marinating, and then I think I finally have the right question. So you mentioned that pre to COVID, company can kind of come in and pitch, right? They may not have to be profitable. And then you mentioned that post-COVID, there needs to be more kind of I don't know if I want to use the word maturity. Can you elaborate a little bit more on, so for a brand new, entrepreneur that's coming into the scene, and they are still trying to figure out things, what is the right way for them to kind of think through their approach with regards to what's the right time to, start talking about funding in the post-COVID world?
So I will say this, as someone who's also, I think once you're fundraising, you're always fundraising, whether it's for your next fund or your next round. And my theory is you never put your pencils never down. You're always raising, you're always out there, you're always networking, because you don't know what's coming around the corner, right? So what I would say to founders, and I'm going to give you an example of one of my portfolio companies that we actually invested in during COVID. For founders, you have to be nimble. You have to be willing to adapt to the market. So for example, COVID is presenting accelerated opportunities in certain areas, such as e-commerce and direct-to-consumer. At the same time, it's also causing some companies to really change. And I'm not scared to use the word pivot. I don't think entrepreneurs should be either, because I think that actually can lead to greater opportunities. So one of our companies is called Fitz Frames. Fitz Frames provides AI custom eyeglasses, like I'm wearing, my daughter wears, from the comfort of your couch. And I can, it'll take pictures of my face, it'll customize the frame, and it'll mail the frame to me. Well, that's great, except that, during COVID, people weren't so concerned about that. So they did a quick pivot to PPE, and they have increased their, I won't go into the numbers, but their year-over-year growth and their month-over-month growth has just gone skyrocket because they were willing to adapt to the opportunity. So I would say that founders, coming back to your question, Jing, is that founders need to be thinking about the market and the opportunity, how they fit into it. I have another portfolio company that said, I don't like the word pivot. I said, that's okay. You don't have to pivot, but you do have to adapt. And you do have to be willing to provide the services that people want. So I would say, think about it that way, and the funding is there.
That's a fantastic point. And Arum, I want to come back to you because you're running a startup, you're running a business, and I'm sure you guys had to make changes to your business strategy to adapt to this post-COVID. I would love to kind of hear a little bit about, your business strategy change or the pivot, good or bad word. Maybe you can share a little bit about how you guys navigated through this or navigating through this crisis.
Yeah. First of all, I kind of want to say, hey, I wish all the investors were like Shelly because I've certainly heard a share of horror stories from my other founders in my network, other CEOs, about how fundraising conversations just came to a complete halt or change of terms after COVID hit, etc. And so certainly I was one of the founders who did not want to be in that camp. I certainly did not want to, if I could, be in a situation where I had to raise in this kind of uncertainty. And so, very interestingly, at the very beginning of this year, when COVID was starting to spread in China, one of my board members mentioned, hey, this is kind of happening in the background. It may turn out to be nothing to worry about. However, it could turn out to be really bad. So start thinking about it. And this is the kind of time where you may want to consider deprioritizing growth and think more about survival. So he already mentioned that to me back in January. I did not really pay too much attention to it because it wasn't really happening here. Of course, then things just really started changing pretty dramatically come March. And so as an operator, I think there's two things that we really focus. One is conservation of cash was a real priority, became a real priority for us. I definitely agree this poses a lot of opportunities for companies, but you need to still be there to take advantage of those opportunities. And so we felt like the responsible thing to do as a leader is really make sure that our company can survive through this. And I was really surprised how much our employees really stepped up to help us achieve this goal. So we had a number of cost-cutting measurements that we wanted to take, and our employees came up with a lot of ideas and areas where they felt like we could really cost cut, and we made a very significant improvement without really impacting our top line numbers. And so I think a lot of us, what that means is basically our company had areas that we could really shave off that wasn't necessary, that we could totally optimize, and this gave us really a reason and opportunity to do that. And we're still being very conservative about how we deploy capital. We don't want to compromise, we don't want to basically not grow, but we really, our bar in terms of where we want to invest has become a lot higher. I guess maybe very similar to how investors are thinking. But on the other hand, we do think there's a lot of opportunities that comes out of crisis, right? So our thought was, how can we play both defense and offense at the same time? There are things that we just had to do for our customers because, like, for example, knowing that they can't meet up in person, one of our signature feature is once people connect, we actually give them timeline of 1 week to exchange conversations, etc. And then if they want to continue chatting, they can exchange phone, number, or decide to actually meet up within that 1 week. And that's really there in place to give them momentum and reason to actually meet up. That's not going to happen in this situation. And so we decided to change that so that as long as they are continuing the conversation, we're extending the chat indefinitely. So little things like that, even our references to meet up, the language, like we can't be saying, hey, you guys should meet up. And so of course, like we had to make a lot of those little changes. And that's for us, playing defense. Like how can we actually make sure our customer can still experience connection during this time? On the other hand, we paid a lot of attention to how our consumer behavior is changing. And so we started doing weekly surveys and interviews to really understand, hey, like how are you actually dating differently? Like, do you intend to date? And what's your sort of willingness in terms of doing any kind of virtual dating? What kind of virtual dating are you doing? Things like that, really learning from consumers. And even beyond dating, like what are the trends that are emerging? So for example, we noticed there's a lot of interest coming up on online education during this time, which kind of is in line with our mission anyway, because we're all about educating people more about love. And so we started really diving into what are some potentially permanent consumer behaviors that we anticipate that'll have a lasting impact, and how do we actually stay ahead of that? And so one really good example, immediate thing that we did talking about adaptability was we didn't have video feature on our app. And to come up with the video feature would have taken us 12 weeks to do that. And so basically we decided, hey, let's just leverage. The question we asked is like, how can we actually help our customers? Like forget about all the due diligence and, normal process that we would have normally gone through. Let's just forget about that because timing is of essence here. Like, what can we do to help our customers like tomorrow? And so we thought, hey, let's just leverage Zoom video and give our customers opportunity to interact in a group setting with each other, very casual conversations. They can't be meeting friends, etc. So let's give them opportunity to actually connect with, their potential dates on Zoom. And so we started doing that in 5 cities. And very quickly we put this together. We started iterating based on, real-time feedback that we were getting from our customers. Had really great feedback, and we're continuing to do that. And now based on feedback, we're figuring out how we can incorporate that permanently into our product. So that's like a really good example of us, being very adaptive, flexible, ignoring some of the normal process we would have gone through, which takes time, and sometimes that's necessary. But at times like this, really being able to respond to changes was critical.
That's so savvy. That is awesome. I love that you did that. And that's exactly what I'm talking about, which is, you have to seize the moment. There's an opportunity. You incorporated with Zoom, or you partnered, or however it is that you did that, and you kept your customer base going. And it's not a pivot, but you're nimble. That's fantastic.
I love that example. I loved it. So Michele, I know, I love your company tagline, which is decode Silicon Valley. So I'm curious, from a business strategy perspective, because now people can't travel to Silicon Valley anymore. What did you guys have to do in order to kind of pivot to, align with the post-COVID?
I think that the knowledge and the wisdom and the best practices that we use here in Silicon Valley, they're still here. But I think also that there's a lot of smart entrepreneurs all over the world, and the essence really is for what we do is how do we help entrepreneurs do a better job creating, growing, scaling their companies. So there's a lot of expertise that's available to us regardless of where we are. And I think the important thing was, put together programs that make sense for the entrepreneurs, which means we had to go out and survey them to really understand what kinds of questions and issues and challenges they were having. And the challenges they were having at the end of March are different than the ones that they were having at the end of May and the end of June. So as things have changed, their businesses had to adapt. They've had to be really flexible. And we've had to do the same in the sense of understanding what their needs and requirements are and pulling in experts to help them understand what does it mean to adjust your pricing strategy or your business model to reflect the fact that your customer base now has changed on a lot of different levels. So it's really about trying to listen to the market in a really effective, constructive way to figure out what's going on, and can you find people to, or can we find people to address and communicate around those issues to help the entrepreneurs. And so that's what we've been doing, and that's what we're still doing. And I'm getting ready to roll out a big program in September, October, and November for sub-Saharan Africa, the Middle East, and Southeast Asia. And it's all about trying to understand what are the issues specifically that entrepreneurs in those regions are having related to the pandemic, either whether it's super hyper local to their business or if they are selling globally, what are the things that they're experiencing. So we're in the process right now of researching what issues so that we can pull in the right kind of speakers.
Thank you. So Shelly, when I was researching about the Shatter Fund, I was so impressed with the mission statement, what you guys are focusing on. With the COVID, I'm trying to figure out how to ask this the right way without sounding, super terrible, but do you feel like you have to sacrifice your mission in order to be, in order to kind of fit with this environment, right? Because I know you guys are focusing a lot on the women, and I know there's like funding around companies and services for elderly adults. Like, did you feel like you have to sacrifice that to, kind of survive in this environment?
Sacrifice, do you mean, did we have to sacrifice funding women entrepreneurs or women-led companies given the changing landscape driven by COVID? I would say, to the contrary, now is the most critical time, right, for women to get that access to capital. And I'll give you an example. Our economic recovery is going to depend on everyone that is able to contribute to the economy being a part of that economy. The innovation economy is a key driver of our economic recovery. It doesn't make sense that women don't have the access to the capital they need to be 100% participants in that economy. So I would say that right now, more than ever, women are the driving factor for that recovery. The other part of it is that, there's, a big part of how COVID is driving change is in e-commerce, and it's in direct to consumer. I think, as Michelle was saying, there's more delivery services, and there are so many ways that are changing in the digitization of consumption. And women are key buyers of that consumption. And yet, if they don't have a hand in designing the solutions, that doesn't make sense. So right now is the most critical time for women to have that access to capital, to networks, and to markets. And so we're looking to provide all of that more than ever. So the answer is no sacrificing here.
That's awesome. I'm so happy to hear that. So I did wanted to give people some opportunities to ask questions. I haven't seen any new questions coming through the chat. So yeah, definitely, if you have any questions, please type in the chat so that I can, ask to our panelists. So I'm curious that we did highlight some of the changes, Arum, especially you kind of highlight the pivot that you guys had to do from coffee meets bagels. But I'm curious that in addition to change of your business strategy, what other changes that did you guys have to make in order to deal with this unprecedented time? Aside from working remotely, which I think we all have to do.
Yeah, I think a function of the uncertainty, as well as this change in environment of working remotely, it really, and I felt this myself too, it really weighs down mentally on you. And what I think what we specifically really wanted to make sure we get it right and invest time and thinking to is how do we actually protect our employees? And so just making sure mentally they're doing well and mentally they can come off strongly and they know how to deal with whatever it is that this is causing them to experience. It was really funny because, you know, in March it was COVID, and like for a lot of our employees, especially younger ones who's never worked remotely, this was hard. This was really hard. And so, and because it's not even just the work environment that has changed, their entire life changed, right? They cannot see their friends anymore. A lot of the single people who live by themselves, very, very hard. And so number of things we did was we started, you know, there was a coach that we specifically was working with just to really develop our leadership team. We started working with our coach to provide a program for all the employees. We called it resilience program to, you know, give them some tools, more tools under their belt to be able to cope with, you know, this kind of uncertainty or, you know, whatever that they were going through, as well as providing like very regular opportunities for people to connect. So, you know, we had like hangouts that we started organizing. And what that did was actually we started seeing a lot of our employees started organizing on their own. Hey, how do we actually, you know, continue to have fun together and stay connected and do not feel like, because Zoom becomes a lot very transactional, right? You have to set a time and you know, you get off after meetings, etc. And so I think, and also we started having optional sort of additional coffee talk time with the leadership team. So people can voice, you know, any, whatever concerns they had and wanted to just chit chat or whatever it is. And I think offering those types of avenues and more tools for our employees, I think had a lot of positive impact in our ability to execute and for them to also feel, continue to feel tight with each other, which we want to continue to actually do through this, through, you know, even post-COVID.
Yeah, my company is doing similar things as well. I think to make sure that not just about work, but using technology to facilitate social interaction, especially in this lonely times, it's been incredibly important.
Yeah.
Michele and Shelly, I'm curious what you guys have done for your organizations.
I think, you know, you can only take so many Zoom calls in a day. There's a different communication dynamic that happens in Zoom versus sitting in a conference room. So I learned that, you know, more than 6 hours on Zoom is a little over the top for me, that I can't do too much more than that. But also, you know, this whole shelter in place has helped us understand, I think, what are our priorities, what's most important to us, and where do we want to spend our time and energy. And I think from some of the companies that I worked with in Ireland in March and April, they were very much interested in keeping some of their innovation teams connected. And so they organized an innovation roundtable that took place between 5 and 7 p.m. their time. And normally how they do that in the office is with pizza and beer. And so they organized these teams of 6, and the founder of the company organized a pizza and 2 beers to be delivered to each person's house exactly at 5 p.m. when the innovation roundtable was supposed to start, so that they could spend those 2 hours online doing what they do just through an online connection. And so that was part of the way that they were trying to keep the teams connected and keep them creating in the normal, in semi-normal way compared to what they usually do. In another company I worked with, they spend Mondays 35-40 minutes just in a coffee meeting. There's absolutely no business talk. It's just the kind of conversations you might have in the break room or while you're walking to lunch down the street. And so the whole objective there is just to keep those relationships going between people. So I think there's a lot of things that we have to look at that change from not having face-to-face communication and not being able to socialize and not going out to dinner and various different things like that. So how do you keep your teams connected and productive at the same time?
I like those ideas.
So Jing, you're asking essentially how we stayed connected throughout COVID?
Or anything that you guys are doing differently now because we're in a different world now.
You know, I would say that fundraising is definitely interesting from an investor perspective for the fund itself, right? You know, our fund one is closed. We're going to be doing some future activity going forward. And, you know, a big part of that has changed, right? Because LPs want to see you and they want to talk to you. So I would say that and they want to meet you. But, you know, what I found that's changed is, if anyone in an organization that you're pitching has at some point met you and can say you're real and they can, you know, they've been able to have the benefit of, you know, seeing you in person, that is a factor that's changed. It's almost like it's, and that knowing someone is now transitive, right? If person A has met you, then person B and C can say that they met you as well. So I think that's, you know, been really interesting. It's definitely become more efficient. I would say just the work at home is a big change. The first couple of weeks that we were doing Zooms, I was so exhausted, like I couldn't see straight. I was so tired because I was on Zooms all the time. But now it's just settled into it. And I think it's just kind of business as the new usual, if that makes sense. So we just kind of keep adapting with the time, I think.
So I do have some questions. And I'll just throw the questions to the panel and, you know, feel free to pick it up. So there's one question around, are there certain industries that you think will be growing at a greater rate than others going forward?
I certainly think work from home, collaboration tools, productivity monitoring, you know, all these things that help company managers ensure that their employees are working together to solve problems, meet the needs of the market, et cetera. I certainly think those are going to be areas that we continue to see growing and changing over the next, the balance of this year and into the next couple of years, because we really don't have any idea what 2021 and 2022 look like. And then obviously online education, you know, a lot of the big universities are still charging the same tuition for fall tuition, but their classes are online. So if you look at the exchange of value that a parent gets for their student, you know, going off to the East Coast of the United States and being in that environment and that learning environment and building those relationships and things like that, doing it online is a completely different game. And, you know, that tuition, the exchange of value on that tuition may look a lot different when all those classes are done online. So I think those are areas that we're going to see a lot of change in over the next couple of years.
Thank you, Shelly.
Yeah, I would add to that, that health and wellness is going to be a key area for change. One of the companies that we just invested in is an early stage company called Exer, EXER.ai. And what it does is when you're working out at home and you can't go to a gym and you're watching the trainer on, you know, on your video or your camera, or, you know, whatever device you're using, that there's an AI and computer vision activity that comes in and where the trainer tells you, hey, Shelly, your arm is out too far. Could you strengthen your core? Could you bring your foot in? And I thought that was just fascinating that this could be done. So I think health and wellness, anything from, you know, tools at home that pick up your respiratory systems. We have a company that's working on that now and can alert you to, you know, what might be coming ahead of, you know, instead of like the thermometer, like they can actually tell you your, you know, your symptoms and your vitals. I think all of those things are going to be big areas of focus.
Yeah, I'm personally doing a lot of Zwift.
Awesome.
Yeah, if you guys don't know, it's basically like a virtual cycling thing. It's like the cheaper version of Peloton. So Peloton, you get a bike, Zwift, you get an app for like $9 a month or something. But it's been, you know, it's been amazing because if I couldn't work out, I think I would go insane.
Yes.
Okay, anyway, next question. Hopefully we'll be out of COVID situation by the end of the year. Me too. I hope so too. What are some of the inputs for individual startups and business to come out of the COVID situation stronger than before? I think we touched upon some of this in our Q&A already, but I'm just curious from the panelists, any additional maybe like a word of advice that you guys wanted to offer?
Yeah, I have a couple of things. Firstly, this is tough, and let's admit this is tough, okay? So the way to get through tough times is to have a good circle of friends and confidants that you can talk to blow off steam and complain and do whatever else you need to do to kind of process what's happening to you. But business-wise, I think it's really important to find a mentor or a coach to have some outside objective perspective on what's happening in the business. And then secondarily, the only way you can make decisions is with as much factual information as you can get. And there's a limited amount of facts you can collect in a situation like this. And one of the things that entrepreneurs are really good at is making decisions with ambiguous information. So you got to get even more comfortable with this sort of ambiguity that's going on, and just go back to your own health and wellness about how do you keep yourself centered and balanced, and how do you keep yourself feeling confident about making decisions with less than 100% information. But most importantly, find people that you can talk to that keep you sane and give you an objective perspective about what's going on.
I would add to that and kind of pick up to what Arum said earlier. Know your OpEx, right? As a founder, you need to know what cash on hand you have. Cash is king. Decrease your burn, your monthly burn. If you haven't done it, do it now. If you've done it, do it again. Increase your runway. If you need to raise a bridge, start thinking about that. I think that is one of the first things that we did with all of our portfolio companies is we went out and said, here's a spreadsheet. Tell me your OpEx. Tell me what you have in the bank. What are you planning on raising? What's your runway? Because we needed to know who's going to survive and who's not. And I think, some of that is industry driven, of course. You can't help it if you're in the travel industry. But at the same time, just knowing your numbers because they don't lie and then getting ahead of them is the best thing that you can do in preparation, in my investor opinion, for 2021.
Yeah, I have to really echo that. I think initially we did sort of 2 rounds, but now it's sort of ongoing of our OpEx evaluation. And first we said, okay, we can actually elongate our runway by 6 months by doing this. And then our investors came back and said, okay, you gotta do more. Can you do more? And then once you start really digging in and asking the hard questions, I mean, it was a forcing factor. But honestly, at the end of the day, it was something that, we were spending money on things that we didn't need to. So it was a really, really great exercise. And because of this, we're going to come out stronger. The other thing that I would add is we think a lot about at CMB, of course, a lot of people say people is everything. Everything boils down to your team. And I think this really gave us, because we were sort of rethinking about, what does that mean to actually come to the office every day and how we work, etc. I think with our employees, we are able to co-create really, how can I help our employees maximize and reach whatever dreams that they have, in their life. And it could be that CMB, maybe it can happen in CMB, maybe it's something else, but really giving them opportunity to think about that, even because a lot of us don't even do that. Think about that and sort of rethinking what function work can play into that. I think it sort of gave us a lot of ideas, and we're talking about this internally now a lot as a team on what can CMB do to help our individual employees reach all the dreams that they want to, not just career, but just the life that they want to design. And I think, those conversation is really what's getting our employees to be even more productive at CMB, frankly, right? And enable us to come out stronger.
Well, this has been so wonderful. We do have another question, but it's very specific to Shelly, so I would recommend maybe connect offline. If anybody have any additional questions, this is the time to put in. But I do wanted to thank the panelists because this has been amazing. Like I mentioned at the very beginning, I signed up for this because I wanted to know a lot of these questions that I was asking. Overall, what I'm getting is that whenever there's disturbance or turbulence, there's opportunity. If you think right, if you think about it the right way, you can turn that uncertainty into opportunities. It's all about being nimble. It's all about think about where you are, your environment. Tap into your network. Do not forget about your network. Continue to build your network and leverage your network and support and your intelligence brain to, really turn this situation into a positive situation for you and for your company.
Well said.
Thank you. So any more questions? Would you mind shorten the question? Okay. Should learn from, okay. Excellent. I don't think I see any additional questions. Denise or Amanda, if you see anything that I missed, feel free to call out.
No, I think that was it. And I just want to say thank you so much to our amazing panelists, Michele, Shelly, Arum. Oh my gosh, we learned so much today and a lot of key takeaways. And thank you so much, Jing, moderating a great panel. And thanks to all of you who showed up today. We hope that you got a lot out of it. And so, yeah, so I hope everybody has a great rest of the day and hope to see you at other events. So thank you.
Thank you so much, everyone. Thank you. Bye.
Bye, thank you.